It kind of helped them advance. I mean, do you think this was a conspiracy?
Gotta go with Jacob Butter. Gotta go lefty.
No, we're talking about the players. That's tournament champion into the podcast.
There he is, right there.
Oh, he doesn't even know how to watch. Go to youtube.com and search Down Lane Podcast. What's up, bowlers? Welcome to Down Lane Podcast. We are streaming live from the lab at Town and Country Lanes. I am your host, Kyle Haines, and with me is the assistant to the host, Anthony the Butcher Scaccia. Thanks. And with us, as always, is Austin, the producer, Van Buren.
I'm glad Anthony matched your energy there.
Yeah, thanks so much for completely popping the balloon on that one.
Well, God, I hate these headphones. Just I hear myself talk every time, and like I can't talk and listen to myself.
We can't listen to you talk either.
I know
horrible.
That's what I'm saying. That's how I understand how you guys feel now when I'm talking on the show.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Good show tonight. We got a big show tonight. We got the commissioner of the PBA, Mr. Tom Clark, coming in just a second. But before that all goes on and we harass him with all of our questions, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell to get alerts from the channel. We will also be chatting with you guys, taking any of your questions or comments that you'd like to pass along to the commish. And you guys can always check out our Etsy shop or email us at downlanepod@gmail.com. So yeah, let's shall we get right on into it? Bring in the commissioner of the PBA.
I will say it's nice to have you back.
Me? Oh, you guys struggled big time last week.
No, we did not. We did good.
That's going to be the most popular one of the season.
We
you just
did
wait.
really good.
I'll check the stats.
we did good, and you had to go trick or treating.
Yeah,
you can give your kids candy any other day of the year.
I've got family obligations.
You could have came to my house. Could have given pretend candy. Good job.
All right.
Thank God you're back, though.
The people are here to watch the commissioner of the PBA. Let's bring him in, Mr. Tom Clark. Welcome back.
Hit the applause. That way I don't have to clap this time.
How's it going, Tom?
Yes. The last time I was on the show, I think we said the Butcher. We're going with the Butcher, right?
Yes. That's right.
That's right.
That's awesome. That's perfect.
I think I bowled that night in the apron.
You would too.
I did.
Thank you again for coming on with us, joining us. A month or so ago, I reached out to Tom to say, hey, when the schedule gets announced, do you mind coming on and chatting with us about some different things and whatnot? And he said, I guess if I have to. No, just kidding. He said, absolutely. And for that access, I very much appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me back on. I'm glad you're still going strong with this.
Strong, weak, whatever.
You're going with it.
That's right.
All that matters. Stay alive. That's the key.
That's right. So, yeah, we want to touch on a bunch of different things, if you don't mind. But we might as well talk right about it. The schedule was released last week. Looks, kind of similar, I would say, to most of the years in the past recently. Nothing, well, there are some big things happening this year, it looks like, changes-wise with the league. So we're going to get into that in a few minutes. We'll save that for a little later once we get some more people to pop in. But one of the things I noticed, which has been happening a little bit, but they're named a little bit different this year, are the prelims on Saturday. So can you kind of give us an idea of what that means on Saturday, prelims exactly?
Yeah, it's the same thing that it's been.
Okay.
So yeah, like the U.S. Open will be a extended step ladder. The Masters will be what we did 2 years ago at the Masters. And what I really like about that one, that was pretty cool. If you remember it, Rash and Parker made that first show, and then I think it was Kyle Sherman who made it from that show into the final.
Yes.
And the cool thing about it was that it Simo won that one, and you had to beat him twice to win the title. He
Yeah.
won the first game, it was over. But so I really like that about being able to make you have to beat the undefeated top seed twice. And we'll have to do that again this year.
Do you get any feedback about specifically having a little extra coverage on Saturday, whether it's in ratings or actual feedback, like what people like to see or how the bowlers like to bowl, right? So they're going to want extra time on TV anyway. But from the viewers, from the fans of the PBA, do you get any feedback from like that?
Really haven't gotten too many questions about it. I think they ask reasons for it, and without thinking that, golf coverage Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday, is round 3, and then and it kind of helps promote the final. It promotes the last day. And the biggest and the best thing about our relationship with Fox is the opportunity to be on big Fox broadcast channel. And we're on that with every major championship. And as bowling fans and as the PBA and anybody, we need the largest possible audience on those big Fox shows, because you can't underrate the value of being on broadcast television. And if you remember, for the history of the PBA until 1997, we were on broadcast television, and then we were not until 2019. And the entire time for those 22 years, everybody said, we got to get back on broadcast television. We achieved it with Fox. And now we're on 8 times a year on broadcast television, all the major championship finals. And so we've got to do all we can to drive audience into those days. And so to have a Saturday where it's the preliminary or extended step ladder, whatever you want to call it, it helps not only bring more exposure to that event and to players that did well in that event, but it also helps promote the fact that we're on tomorrow with the final. It's like a giant commercial in addition to being key important competition. So that's a reason why I like it, and why I think it's really, really critical. If anybody ever asks, if you remember last year, we used those slots to actually try to expand the PBA league and to do PBA league matches live in those slots. And while great in one way, I mean, it was fantastic. The ratings were about the same as when you do either the league or you do the preliminary round of a extended step ladder. But if you had to say the negatives of that, it would be slightly confusing for a basic fan to be like, wait a second, what's this? So we have a team event, and now tomorrow is the U.S. Open final when it's U.S. Open week, And then also from a player standpoint, let's say a Simo or somebody, he's in the U.S. Open final, that's what he cares about. And we're saying, oh, but you got to bowl a team match the night before. That's not perfect, So while that was a great effort and ambition to try to increase the exposure of the PBA league and have an actual season, it wasn't perfect, So we can argue every side of it, but I think it's pretty cool to have a full weekend of U.S. Open, a full weekend of Tournament of Champions, full weekend of the Masters, full weekend of the Players Championship, and so that's what we're doing next year.
Keeps the storyline going, as Kyle has preached to me for years. So it's Kyle, you must be happy to hear that.
Well, I mean, I've always said, we need more coverage. And I completely understand what that means behind the scenes. I know what production takes as far as cost and effort and people and whatever. But maybe you can tell us, from the PBA's vantage point, not in what I'm thinking is, like, I don't think as far as the qualifying goes, or even the day before, we don't have to put it in the studio, I'll call it, quote unquote, every single time. So is there other than just financially or what have you, is there a reason that makes it more difficult to capture the qualifying, kind of like golf, where, you know, you've got cameras around, you know, that we could capture it that way in its natural habitat, if you will?
Yeah, you know, which we do on Bull TV now.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, and I had the same thoughts, you know, back in you know, God, I've been around a long time now. So I started with the PBA in 2008. I can't remember which year we did it. It may have been 2010, 2011. But I wanted to bring the position round to television. You know, I love the position round. It'd be fantastic. And you got all these different pairs of lanes, and you line them up with cameras and bring it to people live. And that would be the way that we promoted the final. And we did it at the US Open once at Carolier, actually, back in the day. And I think you can find the show on YouTube. I mean, it was pretty cool, but it was pretty hard to follow for the general fan. And it was also more expensive. You need more cameras, you need, you know, and I just remember sitting in the truck, the TV truck, for a little bit of that show. And I mean, guys were going nuts. I mean, it was just hard. It's hard to jump if you don't have a staff that's used to that, you know, and it would be an extended staff. So if you really wanted to cover like the position round exactly correctly, the timing is difficult to fit a time slot. The number of cameras necessary, the number of directors, the number of producers, everything changes if you're going to do it 100% correctly. We did a great job with that one. I remember Rob Stone was working with us then. That was on ESPN, and Rob did a great job, but it wasn't easy. I mean, and it gets confusing for the general fan, and sometimes the really important fan, like an ESPN or a big partner, watching that and saying, what is going on here, you know? And for the most part, bowling on television has been that step ladder, you know, and that set. And so when you break from that, it's difficult. Now, at the same time, yeah, we do it on Bull TV. We used to do it on Extra Frame, Flow Bowling, you know, every step of the way that we've tried to bring as much coverage as possible to the true fans. But I think in this case, from a financial standpoint and from an ease of use standpoint, we're better off staying in that set, you know, and then trying to figure out how to best. And it turns out, you know, believe me, I'd love to be creative with it and do more than just an extended step ladder. And we have. I mean, with the Players Championship, we made it a bracket and we did knockout matches, and then we got to the next day. You know, so we've done things like that. But if you ask the players, and if you look at the value of where you finish in a tournament, bowling the entire event and finishing sixth or second, let's say, and then losing in a bracket match against somebody that was seventh or higher is really defeating and upsetting, because now you finished fifth or sixth when you really finished second. When you do a step ladder, the lowest you can finish is one place lower than what you earned. So the leader of a step ladder can only finish second. The guy who finished fourth in the whole tournament, 48 games, the lowest they can finish is fifth. And I think that rewards people for what the real competition was. It wasn't, you know, bowling's an interesting sport. You bowl 48 games and it comes down to one game. And it comes down to one game on TV. It's like, you know, it'd be like if golf played, you know, you play 70, you play all these holes, and then you say, all right, throw them all out. We got the top five. We'll play one hole for the two. Yeah, and that's what we do. I mean, it makes it really exciting, and the step ladder's legendary, really, and it kind of defines bowling. But it's a different sport than what you've seen all week. So I like that they were rewarded that way, and it makes it right. You know,
I've noticed in the last year or two, like almost every finals now, I think, is basically step ladder, right? It's like almost all of the brackets have been, excuse me, taken out.
Yeah.
Which, to your point, makes a lot of sense. But now that you say it, I'm like, huh, I realize that now.
Yeah, as you're talking about, I'm thinking about we run the summer series where there's a bracket and it's 1 through 8, and sometimes the top guy gets knocked down. I'm like, man, that must suck. Yeah,
That's right.
We've all been there.
because I mean, it's only, don't get me wrong, it's a 4-game, it's just a nightly thing, a weekly thing that we do in the summer. But I'm like, man, that must suck. It's your first, and then you technically lose to the 8 guy, and you technically came in 7 or 8 spots below. So it does make a ton of sense. Right. Yeah, it's not as much as a buzzkill in the stepladder format,
right? Which
I do like.
The stepladder is also, you have to, think about people who are not as familiar with the game as you guys are, and they're comfortable with a stepladder, and it's kind of easy to follow, and it's kind of, bowling's the only sport that does it, and you have a loss every 20 minutes or so, and someone moves on, and it's really interesting that way. It's also, when you think about lane conditions and how important they are to bowling, if you do a bracket, you have a match, a semifinal match, and then another semifinal match. And now you're going to ask the person from the first semifinal match to come back for the final on a pair of lanes that the last semifinal match guy is a little bit more familiar with than the person who would come in after a match. And so even just the little teeny things about doing that is not as sporting, really, as just moving up that ladder.
And the 1 seed or the upper seeds in the commercial breaks, they always get practice, right, between the matches, if I remember right.
They get practice, and the person that's coming on the pair does not get to practice on that pair. So they can go down and stay warm on a non-televised pair. But the number 1 seed, and every seed, when you come on, they're the only player that gets to practice on the TV pair.
So can you give us a little insight about the scheduling process? And maybe this is like really into the weeds that maybe nobody other than me cares about, but
Kyle's you're just so in there. So you dive deep into things. You text me about things, and I'm like, Kyle, I don't know.
But like one of the things that I do tend to notice, and maybe it's because I'm a negative Nancy, I don't know, but the schedule changes kind of from year to year. There's a couple of tournaments that stay consistent, but like there's not like our heavy majors that are like the same week every year. Is this not a problem, but is this a issue with the centers or timing with the like what's the real driving factor there that the schedule's always kind of different?
I understand what you're saying. I mean, on the national tour, the number 1 driver is television. Okay. So when Fox says it's collaborative, and we work together and we explain what we're going for, but they have to deal with a bunch of other sports. We want our major championships to be on broadcast television, highest possible audience. So the number 1 thing we're waiting for is what weekends, what days can we get Big Fox?
Gotcha.
Now, once we get them, now you try to figure out what do we want to be able to put in those slots. And with ESPN, even there were, it wasn't so much the network, but the time of year where our history and data would tell us we do better, let's say in January or February than we do in April, May, June. So if our number 1 best foot forward signature event is the Tournament of Champions, and we know we're going to do a better number in early February than we will at the end of the year, we were going to move that event there and do it right there just to get the best audience for our best event. So, we kind of drive by trying to have eyeballs and try to get interest going and putting our best foot forward when we have our best opportunity. Now, I want the Tournament of Champions to be last, before with like our playoffs now and things like that. I want it to be, and that's what we're able to do this year. We were able to, for next year. This year we did it. For next year we'll do it as well, because we're able to secure a Big Fox slot in April, and to be able to move the TOC to be there so that anyone that wins the title would be eligible during the year would be eligible for that event. That's great. Now, it probably will not do as good a ratings number as, for example, the U.S. Open in early February, because we're just a sport that does better in the dead of winter than into the spring and stuff. So but to answer your question, it's the network. That's the driver. Then it becomes geography and what can lead into it, and how far do the players have to go, and what bowling centers can we partner with at the exact time that we need them, and become doable for the players to get there, for our crew, for our truck, for everybody to travel. But those are kind of secondary to, all right, here's the pillars of the season based on what we can get on Big Fox.
Honestly, never even occurred to me that was the driving factor. I figured it was all scheduling, all working with the centers, and the television would be kind of, you paid for your time and that's it. But it never even occurred to me that that's where you guys were going. Because my thought is, it looks like the USBC, they schedule their events exactly. I mean, they probably have to work by a schedule anyway. They've got the OCs, they've got the US Open, they've got all the Masters, they've got everything that they have to manage. So they probably don't want to have to worry about even though you want to worry about it, they don't have to worry about the ratings. They just want to get the tournament done and then not have to reschedule at a different time every year. I'm guessing. I don't really know.
Well, they went through that before we partnered with Fox and brought USBC along to put the US Open and the Masters on Fox. Now they wait because they want to find out where are we going to be. Because if you think back, the US Open was like in October or later for a few years on CBS Sports Network because we didn't have a partnership.
Right.
USBC. So once we had Fox and we partnered with USBC and we want those majors on big to reach as many people as possible, and we want them on Big Fox, now they wait and they say, okay, we'll be where you need us to be. And they move the US Open, for example, from the end of the year to February so it can fit within our schedule. We're not in the same position as we're not a sport that can walk into a network partner and say, this is our schedule. Now you need to put this on. I'd love it if we were. We're not that way. That's why we need as big an audience as possible on those shows so we can get that way someday. That's
100%.
That's the way it works.
I mean, golf has its own channel, for crying out loud. So, obviously, they've got the viewership. It's a major popular sport. We get it.
They've moved a lot. They moved the PGA Championship around. It's up, down. I don't even know where it is now. The Players Championship moves around.
I think the Masters is like the one that's consistent, right? Like they have the same spots.
And the Masters is not a PGA Tour event,
right?
And that's just a relationship with Augusta National, with CBS. The PGA Tour doesn't have any majors. Their biggest event is the Players Championship.
Mm-hmm.
The Royal and Ancient, the British Open, that's a deal with ABC. So they deal with television too, but they've learned over decades of coverage where's the best time of year for this event in the schedule, and so they're a little more regular for sure. But it's not like they don't move around and have the similar types of issues. And certainly the PGA Tour, they're really on the side watching that. Now those big events help define their players and make their events better, but it's not exactly the same type of situation that we have.
Do the bowlers care about the consistency of the schedule? Does it matter to them?
I think they do. I think, for example, if I had told them for 2025, the U.S. Open is the first event of the year,
which it has been, by the way,
right? It has been in the past. We've had majors. They would say, I don't like that. Most of them would say, we don't like that as the first event. So, like, for example, this year, I worked extremely hard to work with Fox and then talk to Mid-County Lanes in Delaware and figure out a way to have at least one classic event, PBA Tour event, prior to the U.S. Open, and we pulled that off this year.
I like that.
Thought you had actually something.
No, I'm just I'm soaking it all in right now because there's a lot of information going on, and as you know, my brain doesn't work as fast as you guys.
1 mile an hour.
Exactly.
The butcher. You're the best.
Yeah, that's it. So
He's just
I'm
slicing me.
yeah, I'm just thinking about it. I mean, everything that's going on is making sense, and I'm listening to your response
Mm-hmm.
because you're the smarter one here.
Well, what happened is, Tom, pardon us for a minute, but what happened is for a week now, I said, the commissioner of the PBA, kind of important, not just a bowler. I mean, was a bowler, is a bowler, but not just a bowler.
Mhm.
Kind of an important guy. Roger Goodell of bowling is going to be on the show. Be prepared. That was the conversation. And then
This is true.
So what happens is I think of questions, and you know what a good journalist, I'm not a journalist, by the way, but a good journalist also thinks of responses and rebuttals. Anyway, good job.
I fly by the seat of my pants.
To be completely fair, he's as prepared as he generally
Normally is.
Yeah,
Actually,
this is normal.
he was extra prepared because he sat down and said, "Where's the sheet tonight?"
Yeah, I think. But here's the other thing: is that you are more of the TV guy too. You
Sure.
always, because you have some, I will say, experience.
Sure.
Because I was like 12, never knew what you were doing. You were doing TV stuff.
All right.
I'm waiting till we get to the other cool questions.
Yes, the ones that you care about.
The one not even care about, but the ones that I can maybe relate to a little bit more.
Yeah,
How's that?
sure.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
All right. So schedule-wise, number of stops, is that something that bowlers are also looking for, viewers looking for? Any more additional stops to add to the season ever down the road?
Of course, I'd love it if we could do more stops and more consistent, more weeks, and be able to get to more locations, more markets, because that's really important for growing a fan base. And it's like when we come out with a schedule, the number one problem or question I get is why can't you come to my city? Why can't you come to our region? And there's just such a limited number that we can afford, that we can pull off in working with all of our partners to be high level. And so there's always going to be people left out, and those people, lose a little bit of connection with the PBA, and they don't get to bowl that pro-am, and they don't get to come out and watch and connect with the bowlers so that they'll want to watch every week whenever they're on. And I hear that all the time. And so of course you want to do more.
When you say why can't you come to my city, you're talking about the fans are saying that, not
fans,
the proprietors.
fans. Yeah, fans are saying that. The fans, they want us to come to their town so they can come watch the PBA, and that's great.
Sure.
And so it's a great question. I'm so happy, and I never say there's never been the answer. Well, we'll never go to that area because it's terrible. It's never. We want to go. Ideally, we're going somewhere every single week of the year. And the great thing about bowling is it's flexible. Where if we have the kind of success that we want, we can do that, and we can. We sort of do it on the regional level. That's not a national tour event. You're not going to have enough money to get people to travel from all over the world to compete in those events. But we do get to a lot of markets with the regional. We go to 180, during a year with our regional regional system. But for the national tour television, which is all very expensive, we go to as many as we can, and this is the limit that we can right now.
And what's the driving force behind that? Is it bowling centers willing to kind of pay to get you there, or is it funding for TV or travel, or is it all of it all at once? Like, are there bowling centers that are willing to?
Yeah, it's all of it at once. I mean, I think you start with those pillars and you look at how the schedule has to work. And so there's only a handful of places that can follow some of these big events that have to happen. And then you're looking for the types of bowling centers that have enough lanes and space and quality and an interest in the proprietor or the host to not only pay a host fee, but be able to drive fans in, have a great pro-am. But yeah, it's everything. It's geography, it's timing, it's and when we're going strong, it's January to the end of May. That's when league bowling's going on. And when we go into a bowling center, we're taking your center for a week. So you got all your leagues all week. It's more than an investment in host fees to have to pay the PBA. It's really more the loss that you're going to have to take in
Oh, yeah.
order to host the PBA all week. And you know, the number of places that can do that at the exact time that you need them, you know, goes down. So, you know, it's just putting that it's a big puzzle. It includes everything, and we do the best we can. And sometimes it's a little off. It's like, well, wait a minute, we're going from here to what? Or we're doing what to what?
Yeah.
We have like this year we have a week off before we go to the World Series. And I'd say the event I'm most excited about this year is the World Series going back to the National Bowling Stadium in Reno. And the great partnership with Caesars, which now owns the hotels next to the stadium, the El Dorado and Silver Legacy and Circus. And so partnering with a company like Caesars and being back at the stadium for the first time since 2017 with the World Series will enable us to have the biggest international field we've ever had, the biggest field, hopefully, we've ever had for a World Series. And it's just going to be, and we're going to do 4 animal pattern events plus a world championship there. So we're increasing the number of events that we're doing. All that stuff is making me really excited, but you got to get to Reno. So where are
It's
we?
really hard.
Right. Where are we coming from? And then where are we going after? And where we're coming from, we're going to be okay because the way we scheduled it, we'll actually have a week off. People have plenty of time to get there. Then the other thing, then coming out of it, we have like a little issue, you know. The Masters is the next week in Detroit, but the end of the World Series, there's only 5 guys left. Everybody else is gone. They're way gone, and they can get to Detroit, but they're going to have to fly. Or I mean, if you're driving, that's a hell of a drive, and so they've got to get from Reno to Detroit. The 5 guys that are in the final of the World Championship live in Reno need to get to Detroit and practice and then start the next day. And it's really tight. So we have to work with the USBC to say, put those 5 guys, whoever they are, in the last squad, the last practice block, and then in the last squad, in the C squad for when the Masters starts, and so that they can be at least comfortable. You know,
When do they release those lane assignments? I forget.
They'll do it that week. Yeah, they'll do it
that week usually.
Okay.
Talking about availability for the PBA and like the centers, would that be something where the PBA would possibly down the line make their own center to possibly have events for themselves in their own arena, let's say, and then maybe use it in the off season as a training facility with their own PBA coaches and stuff like that? Is that a possibility down the road?
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, and I've made
I know it's a crazy thought, but
no, it's not. It's a great thought, and when you consider that Bolero owns the PBA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes that very possible, and for example, Bolero bought Thunderbolt in Detroit.
Yep.
And that's one of the great centers and one of the great arenas for televised bowling. And back when I started at the PBA and we needed to figure some way out to make this thing stay alive, Thunderbolt was the key. And that's where the first World Series was. So we could do so many events, move the finals into the arena and do multiple television shows in there. And that was back in 2008-9, and now we're kind of back where we can do things like that again and utilize Thunderbolt in different ways because Bolero owns it. And so, extrapolate that into a number of different centers around the country that could become those types of sports centers and be the types of places where the PBA can play and where TV works is, certainly something that we've all talked about. Now, making that a reality is, takes a lot of cooperation and you got to make it make sense. Financially, right. but it's a great thought, and I completely agree.
So, speaking of Anthony's magic brain and amazing ideas, we're gonna bring something up in a second, and it's about the Elite League and this what seems to be kind of newish update. But first, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell to get alerts from the channel. If you listen on your podcast service, don't forget to give us a 5-star review or a thumbs up or however you like your podcast, hearts, symbols, or whatever. I don't know, but just like us and be good to us.
Be gracious.
I'd take 4 stars. I mean, if you can give 4 stars, I think
4. All right, thanks.
I mean, I think I'm a 4. I think I'm a 4.91 on Uber.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's
So
pretty good.
I think that'd be the goal.
I have one really bad Uber ride in Vegas. I was screaming at the guy to pull over because otherwise the car was gonna
You're gonna pee,
be
right?
really wet.
I remember that. You're stuck in traffic.
Yeah, stuck in traffic. The guy wouldn't let me out of the car.
One too many slushies, huh?
One too many slushies. Typical Vegas loser. Anyway, okay, so the Elite League seems to be updated, changed. There are some things going on. Before we get to those things, I want to play you 2 clips from our show from September 21st, 2023. Because one of them, because we have a prophet on our hands. His name is Anthony.
Okay.
Comes up with some brilliant ideas.
Okay.
And last week our show was titled "Is the PBA listening to DLP?" And I know what your answer is going to be, but let's play those clips. Go ahead, Austin. Clip number 1.
I think
does it look like?
what you would do is you would schedule your tour stops, and then you would. This would probably shrink the league. It would probably shrink the league, but you would have a national event, and then you would have a team event.
That'd be interesting.
Okay.
All right, so that was clip number 1. So that's Anthony talking about how they should or you should schedule the stops along with the Elite League or the tour stop, the Elite League along with the tour stops. That happened last year. That was exciting.
When did I do that?
That was September 21st, 2023. So that was actually slightly before they announced the schedule.
Good for me.
Pretty much exactly what we did. Yes.
That was good for me.
Yep. Clip number 2, Austin.
So the thing I was thinking of is, I think it'd be more interesting if the ball companies did it.
Like made the league.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then you could have. Now it becomes a little bit more important on who signs with who.
So
you could change the landscape for the players.
You could also make a
possibly.
manufacturers cup.
that's what you're saying is like instead of
you got-
having the mixed teams of all of the
Team
different-
Brunswick
you,
versus
right,
Team
you would have to have
T300 versus
right.
you would have to have ample amount of staff players. Also, it spreads the players out between brands. Now I know they can still throw whatever, but when they're on the show, they can still throw whatever, but it still makes it up of their individual staff. So like if you
So I ask you, Tom Clark, who is watching Down Lane Podcast from the PBA?
That is great. No, it really is almost exactly. I would tell you if I saw it, but and I didn't see that. But he's completely right, and that's exactly what's happening. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. I love it. I love
I'm a
it.
genius.
And not only that.
Go ahead.
But when I had to, we had to do this, and it wasn't because the old PBA league was bad. It wasn't because of anything like that. I spent my every minute of every day trying to build that league. It wasn't because of that. It's just a kind of a confluence of different partnerships that forced us to have to figure out a way to make this work for 2025 a different way. And what I called it was the Manufacturers Cup, just like he said on the thing. But it's not going to be called that because somebody with a better branding mind than me called it the Battle of the Brands or something. So it's not going to be called the Manufacturers Cup, but that's exactly what I called it. So it's funny.
That's good. Good for me.
Anthony, you I missed last week's show as we said at the top of the show, but I did listen to it, and I believe you were going to ask for some compensation.
Yeah, I was going to ask for compensation.
Do you remember what it was?
No. Do you think I remember anything? Did I say $100 million?
I'd ask for 10%. It's 10%.
10%. Oh, that's way better than what he asked for.
I think he just asked for an entry fee.
Well,
right?
you don't know what
I think
10%
that's
of
You asked
what.
for your membership fee.
You should go for Good for me. Listen, I'm a cheap date, I guess. That's pretty good, though. I mean, I think it's a great idea. Obviously, I said it, so I think it's a good idea. But I have lots of ideas.
He does stretch before he pats himself on the back. So
Yeah, my arms don't work as well with the shoulder problems. But yeah, I should give myself a pat on the back every morning. I have great ideas, I guess. What do you think, Kyle?
But for seriously, I did see Norm Duke post that he was pretty sad to see the league as it was go. But what are we to expect this year?
Yeah, well, we'll have 8 teams, and they will be based on the brands of the manufacturer brands. The 8 brands will be Storm, Roto Grip, 900 Global, Brunswick, Hammer, Ebonite, Deviate, and Motive. So those will be the 8 brands. Each one of those brands by January 1 will take a look at the exempt field or the field of players that we are considering that are going to bowl every tournament this year. That's the top 43 from last year's point list, the 12 from the tour trials, and there are, a number of players that have won PBA titles over the last 10 years who are not in that list that will be given the right to bowl every single tournament, not just the majors, but even the classic events. So those will be the players that are the full that have the full opportunity to be considered for the league. The brands, each brand will designate a roster of players. So in the minimum 6, but they can have more than 6. So let's say Storm has 10 players, and let's say Brunswick has 9, and let's say Motive has 7. They will designate their rosters, which will not change for the year, by January 1. So now you know who's on Storm's roster, who's on Roto-Grip's roster. Use famous players to tell you that you can figure Belmo will be on Storm. You can figure Simo will be on Roto-Grip, that type of thing. And then they'll have all these players. So then when we go to the first event, there'll be a brand manager for each team. We'll go to Delaware for the first event. And the brand manager for Storm will basically play fantasy football with his roster and say, all right, I've got 9 guys I could play. They're going to play 5. The other 4 will bowl in the tournament, and they're bowling to try to win the Delaware. But the points that the players achieve in Delaware, it'll only be those 5 that he picked. So every week you'll see who they choose, and they'll probably do it publicly, and it'll be kind of really good content, about how they're choosing their players. And then, like in Delaware, maybe he picks Belmo and Chris Vi or whatever, 5 guys, and maybe he didn't pick Richie Teese or something, and Richie Teese wins Delaware. And it's kind of like when you're playing fantasy football and you go, why didn't I start this guy? I mean, shit, he had the greatest day of his life, and I didn't start him, and I started this other guy who didn't score. So that'll be part of the conversation. So then after Delaware, we'll see how every brand did in total points for their 5, and that'll be your leaderboard. And that leaderboard now we go to the U.S. Open, same deal, and they'll pick their 5, and so we'll do that all year long. And by the end of the year, you'll have the top 8 teams in order, and we're going to put them into a big step ladder and go 2 days with that. And roll it down, roll it off until it gets to the number 1 seed who earned it all year. We'll bowl a 2-game match against whoever survives that step ladder to be the ultimate brand. So I think it'll be, like you said, years ago, when you were thinking this through. It is very important, and it's part of any kid's dream of being a pro bowler. One step is signing with a bowling ball brand. One step, Storm signed me and they're giving me balls or whatever, or Brunswick signed me and they're giving me bowling balls, and I'm bowling regionals. And so those staff rosters will mean more and more, even on a minor league level. They're there, and one day they could move up and be there on the main team. And trying to win and doing well is going to be important in maintaining your contract with your bowling ball company or brand. And the rivalries between brands are strong, even within a same company. I mean, of course, it's strong between Brunswick and Storm, or Motive and and either of those 2 companies. But it's even strong between Roto-Grip and Storm, or 900 Global and Roto-Grip, or Deviate and Hammer. And the fans have an affinity or a loyalty to those brands. And most bowlers, I use Deviate, I use Storm, I use Roto-Grip, whatever it is. And so they're going to develop a following of that team and care more about it. So you can definitely see the positives of running out a season this way and making it about brands. Again, it doesn't take none of this takes away from what I think was really exciting with the previous PBA league, and that could return maybe in the future. You never know how things will go. But this year, in 2025, we're going to do this Battle of the Brands, and I think it'll be fun to follow all year. I know this. I had a really good meeting even just a few days ago with all of the brands, and they are pumped up. I mean, they're really excited about it, and can't wait to figure out who's going to be on their roster, because they're going to move people around. You might see a bunch of people, a bunch of players who might be affiliated with one brand or another, but they're going to try to make their brands all, even or strong, or move a player here or there, and it'll all be really interesting. Then we will have a trading period during the season, in the middle of the season, where these brands can trade players, and you've seen it through the years where Dom Barrett leaves Storm and he goes to Brunswick, or, little things like that. If that can happen in the middle of the season, big news, big story, and be really exciting. So, I think there's a lot of things about it, and that's why we stole the idea from you.
I'm sure.
Well, that's going to give a lot more to talk about on Bowl TV, because they're on for 8 hours a day or whatever it is. So they do have a lot of time where they're talking about cookies and lots of other things.
Right.
But
Content level is going to be,
they can talk about bowling
it's more expandable for them to talk about,
right.
I guess, right?
They can follow guys
elevated.
and how their points
Good
are
word.
lining up. Then they can talk about where their points are for player of the year, and how they're whatever else they can qualify. Their
I think the
qualifications
sport that's kind of caught on in recent years that uses a similar formula is Formula One.
F1,
One. And F1 is because they have the Constructors' Cup that's more of a team situation, and they count those points, and so you're only as good as your worst performer, really. And then they have the individual cup going on at the exact same time. So we have the playoffs, where the top 12 players in points after the entire year will make the PBA playoffs, which is for individuals. We also have the Battle of the Brands, so that the teams that have the highest points will make it into the seeding of the Brands Cup. So 2 different competitions going on at the same time, but not with separate competition. The competition is on the lanes during each tournament.
which actually I like. I mean, I know it was extra bowl TV. Like it was good to have more bowling and for what you pay for. However, asking the guys to do more bowling on when they're trying to concentrate on their actual job, it was probably a lot to ask for.
Yeah, and you were on teams with guys that maybe weren't on your brand, or you're on a team with somebody that you're trying to beat that week, and here you are trying to help them get lined up.
Get better.
For the week. So
that's interesting. I didn't even think of that. But for the content standpoint, you say they're going to submit their rosters. Are you going to have like not in a show, let's say, but are you going to bring them together into a room and maybe have them put their lineups in that way? You can have some graphics like that. Are you guys thinking it's going to be like that, cool. Or are you thinking they're just going to like a small like YouTube, like let's just say it's a 20-minute video
pre-tournament roster check-in, and each manager
possible?
has to do it?
Yeah, or is it just going to be kind of they might do it on their own personal Facebook or whatever page?
Well, now that you said it, I think we should do that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's kind of like we've done a draft every year, and,
right?
And I think that doing it publicly is the way we want to do it. We haven't scheduled that yet. We haven't figured that out yet, but yeah,
it's an idea.
It's going to be a public thing, and each brand manager of each team. And some of these companies have like major executives heading up a team, and some of the companies are thinking about having players, their top players for each brand running their teams and making the decisions week after week. So a lot of the companies are going about it in different ways, and we're going to let them do it whatever way they want. And if we can bring them all onto one show and say, okay, here's our roster for Storm, here's our roster for Rotograph, I think it's a great idea, and something we will do. During the year, I think that we're going to leave it up to those brands. And so they're going to have fun with it. a Roto Grip will probably have its own channel and do their own. Let's say, Chris Schlemmer, and he's been the Roto Grip guy forever. If he's the guy and he says, all right, this week at the U.S. Open, we're going with Simo and Chris Prather and whoever's on that team and lists them out. And he talks about each player and why he thinks they're going to do well in that tournament at Woodland Bowl on those conditions, or whatever reasoning he gives. I think that will bring the fans closer to the action and understand the way that these companies think about their own players. I know that if I was a player that was on a roster and you didn't choose me to be one of the top 5 that week, that's the best week I'll ever have. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I mean, the year Andrew Anderson won Player of the Year, it was because he didn't get picked in the PBA league. It just put a fire under him, and he went after everybody. And that type of thing will probably happen on a week-to-week basis.
I think that's great.
Yeah,
content makes it more. I don't want to say watchable, but it's like more relatable. Like you said, it really makes you want to follow along and see what happens, which is awesome.
Yeah, anything that adds a storyline, anything that adds something to watch is going to get people to tune in, whether it's streaming, anything to engage.
I think it's awesome.
Good word, a couple of things we want to touch on before we let you go, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Something that we hear a lot of, just out bowling through our comments here, is the field size. And so we want to know how the field size for the normal tournaments has been decided.
Yeah.
And what would be the limiting factor for growing that?
Well, there's a bunch of reasons. One would be the size of bowling centers and the general idea that at minimum we would be in a 32-lane center and ideally even larger than that. And ideally, and we're probably not, and we did it this year, but probably not next year in a couple of events. But we want to have one squad events. We don't want to do AB. We don't want to do B squad. We want to do one squad events. We want 4 players on a pair. So if it's a 32-lane center and it's a one squad event and it's 4 on a pair, that's 64. And that's kind of a good number right in there. That number also is when you outline how to reach that top 64 and you consider who we put in that 64, you're kind of guaranteeing everybody this is the elite bowlers in the world. You're not there. If we have a field of 64 and they got there by their finishing last year or making it through a tour trials or whatever criteria we use to determine that field as champions, we're guaranteeing you are not going to see one bad player in this or even marginal player in that. That is going to be the best bowling you could possibly watch. And I think that's important. I think we also want people to strive to be a part of that group, to have more opportunities, win money, and have a career in bowling. When you open it wide up, if you open it wide up every single week, the money is really going to spread out, and there aren't going to be enough players making enough money to be professionals in this sport. So you kind of take most of those things that I just talked about. They all come into play to say, all right, what's the size need to be? And if we had more money, you could do more. If you had, but pretty much, tennis, golf, they do the same exact things. NASCAR, same exact thing. They can't let everybody in. That this is what fits. These are the best. This is the number. Now we need to do a good job of making sure we've got the best people in there. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of that through the years. But there's always a bunch of other players that are as good or better than someone or a number of people that are in that list. They have opportunities to bowl the World Series and the U.S. Open and the Masters and the Players Championship. They're all bigger field, and those and the accomplishments that you could have in those events will help you get into that elite. That people call it exempt, but that exempt field of players when these are the professional bowlers.
Have you ever considered? I'm sure you have, but so like when we bowl a handful of regionals, we're not the weekend warriors that a lot of the guys are, but we do what we can
Try
when
our
we
best.
can.
Yeah.
But there are guys that bowl every single weekend. So what I see is, they're earning points, but those points can't get them to the stage for like the following year. So is there ever a thought where like I don't know if it's this that it would be considered as the same as like the PGA where you earn your points on like the Corn Ferry Tour and then you can move up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like
Mhm.
that type of thing where like you instead of just going to that 1 week trial, can the points in the regions get you to that stage up there?
Yeah, that's a really good thought, and I think that the stage that I'm really happy that we brought back is the RPI.
Mm-hmm.
So now you do well in your region, you make it to the RPI, and at the RPI you have an opportunity at a better prize fund, but also like the winner of the RPI gets to be in the Tournament of Champions. There are at least 2 events this year. I think certainly the World Series and the Players Championship, where we specifically will have in the rules, if you're in the RPI, you're the next layer of players that can enter on a priority basis. So that gets you in there because you're exactly right. I mean, there's some, the Corn Ferry Tour or a minor league of a PGA Tour isn't necessarily regionally based.
Right.
So, not knowing which regions are the strongest and just taking people based on their performance in each region is a little bit of a weakness compared to if it was just a straight up minor league tour that was national.
Right.
So it becomes a little more confusing. So I'm glad the RPI is there. I'm glad we're going to use it to give people priority entry into things. I know that if you end up high in your region and you make it to the RPI, it's going to give you the confidence at that point to be able to try the PBA tour, try not only tour trials, which I'm also happy that we brought back, but PTQs, and we still are going to give people opportunities to try to win their way in at every event, but also just to enter the majors, and that and real success in a major, can really propel you into the top 40 or 50 in points and be able to earn that status. So I think we have a path. It's not quite as good as you just said, and hopefully we can get to that point someday where, yeah, if you're in the top 4 in your region, you're going to have the option if you want to be one of the exempt players in the PBA Tour. But still, it's always going to come down to space, the amount of money we can pay. We don't want to spread that out too much, So a lot of factors have to come into play, and you kind of mix it all together to do the best you can, and not say it's perfect, but just say it's the best we can do.
I'm sure the players always have something to complain about, right?
Well, absolutely. And I love working with the player committee, and they always hit with many different points, and very often we'll adjust and try to understand and they're the ones living it, and they're the ones that know the game better than anyone. So I like it. I like it when they point things out. They're smart to go through the player committee, work with the PBA, and try to make their points clear. If you go on Facebook and say, then you're just kind of an idiot. You're just a fool. And those people, you just kind of, you have to ignore. But
yeah. Well, speaking of complaining, Anthony's left-handed, and I know he has a specific question for you.
I had another
before
question
we
about
go.
exemptions first.
Oh, okay. You can do that.
I actually had an exemption
We
question.
got a couple minutes, so real quick.
I'll make it quick.
Yeah, go
Jeez. Recently,
we took every idea from him. I mean, at some point he's earned a few minutes.
That's right. That's right. So fishing actually just went to I think it was Bass, one of the fishing tours professionals. They actually just went to the kind of a similar thing where they have an exempt field where the pros no longer have to pay into the entry fee to go fish. I was gonna say bowl fish. So the only problem they have is that they did a lot of the statistics, a lot of the players, and after this came out, and a lot of the guys were actually losing money because they're saying they're paying for performance. But in true, thank you, Tyler, Bassmaster Elite Series, they're paying for performance. But it turns out the guys who do worse are going to do better.
Money-wise.
because they are not going to have to pay for the entry fee. So do you guys have any rundown on the payouts, and have you taken into account stuff like that where maybe you're paying for performance but they're not paying the entry fee? How is that looking, and have you ever thought about that? Are the payouts looking similar to last year, I should say, without the players paying into the event?
Yeah, the payouts are almost the same. They're
Okay.
a little bit better. They're right in the same area as they were, and they don't have to pay entry fee.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect it. Now, entry fee, any revenue is important to the bottom line. We had a tour trials. That's entry fee revenue. We're going to open up the World Series. That'll be more entry fee revenue because yes, the exempt players will be free, but the other people will have to pay.
Right.
The players has a little bit more. So we'll pick up and kind of, make up for the fact that we're losing some entry fee revenue by opening some of the events up and having a tour trials to cover that loss. And but also just make the top players' lives a little bit easier is what we were doing. I'm going to look into that. See, you're ahead of me, but I'm going to look. No. That's pretty cool. I didn't know Bass was doing that.
Yeah,
and I'd like to see how that works out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anthony was.
I'll admit something today. I'm a big sports fan. Can't be a bigger sports fan, and I like to wager on sports. I like to bet, and I like that that's growing. And today I had on my sheet, I ended up with $6.50 that was left. And so I looked up table tennis at my casino, and I bet the Czech Republic Professional League of ping pong. And I bet a match that looked like an even match, and I picked one guy. I think his name was Zing or something like that. And I bet $6.50 on him, and then I just checked and I found it, and I lost. but what I learned, and the reason why I'm even saying any of this is, I learned the details of the website that covers all of these matches and how they post the scores and how they define each of these players and how you could actually become addicted to following these players and betting on them playing freaking ping pong in the Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because it was really well done. And that's because there's money involved. And so I hope that's an area that we can grow too. You're going to see a lot more match play this year in 2025.
And I know it started in the PBA. It sounded like, and I'm not a betting man, I do not bet.
Okay.
But it sounded like it was kind of hard to bet on the PBA. Like there's only so many places you could go to. Am I remembering that right?
Well, Bet Rivers is the one everybody started going to, and the syndicate that gives them the odds is very good. And now, like, for example, I live in Milwaukee. There's a sports book at the Native American Casino, Potawatomi Casino. They opened up a sports book, and they have everything. And they have bowling. They run bowling there. I don't bet bowling. That would be a great story if I did, but I don't. I always think there's a camera watching me, from all over the place.
Yeah.
But one time I was standing there with a PBA shirt, and a guy came up to me and knew who I was and talking to me. And I'm like, God, I'm glad I wasn't betting bowling. That'd be a big story right there. But bowling is on a bunch of different wires and available in a lot of places, and we just got to keep increasing that, because once you're involved and you're kind of that close to it, it makes you care about who wins. And if you're watching bowling and you care who wins, it could be your friend, it could be just someone you like or don't like. To me, it's the most exciting sport. I mean, anything can happen. There's luck involved. You can throw a perfect shot and leave a 9-pin. You can throw a bad shot and strike. And
ask Randy Peters.
Yeah. And so it just goes up and down, and your emotions run, and every shot's important. And when you can watch a sport like that, it's just fun. I mean, it's just fun to watch and be connected to. And so I hope we can continue to grow that. But brings me back to what were you really trying to say?
Well, I just was asking because the fishing guys in the Bassmaster Elite Series up in arms. Like there's guys down. They did the finishes, right, and then they took last year's payment for what they got, and they compared it to this year, and guys were down like 50,000-60,000.
The guys that actually
the guys
were
that
top
performed,
guys,
yeah, like they were down big, and it's a
No,
whole.
we didn't hit it. Yeah,
can
we
of
did not.
worms.
We didn't play any tricks with this. We didn't say, "All right, we're taking the. We're going to give you a break. We're not. You don't have to pay entry
Right.
fee." And then you look at it at the end of the year and go, "What?" But we didn't get to bowl for as much money. We did not do that. It's the
Right.
same amount of money. It's just we're just trying to. I want to make their lives the top players, which is to me like that 60 range. I want them to have a more comfortable life, and I want them to be able to not have to ask people for help, and be able to just be out there and be the focus of the greatest sport that we have, and let people try to connect themselves with them. And that's why I'm really happy about the YouTube channels that a lot of our players have started. It's helped in the same areas we just were talking about. You get to know a guy because of their channel, and now you care whether they win or lose. And I want them to be comfortable as possible out there. So that's why I wanted to take away that entry fee and make it be something that the people could aspire to be a part of that PBA tour. And when you're on the PBA tour, you don't pay entry fees. That's what I'm hoping for and trying to build towards.
Yeah, I agree with it. I was just wondering because I saw it the other day, and it's like everybody, all the fishermen are going nuts over it. Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, that's funny that they just did this and the PBA just did. I said, well, maybe I'll ask and just see kind of if anything crazy went out. But it makes sense. And then as for Kyle's other question that he wanted me to ask, which I'll ask quickly, is that during the World Series, man, Lefty Love, I love the lefties. Seems like they didn't have, as good as a year, I don't think. But in the World Series, man, the lefties were on fire. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just wondering if you guys put my tinfoil hat on. I'm just wondering, do the higher ups pay attention to that? Say,
he is the highest up, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a higher up. I'm involved.
Do you say, I haven't seen enough lefties here? We're bowling at Thunderbolt. All lane surfaces are different, so we're gonna try and blah 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 blah, and then bang, the lefties whack it for a week. Is that a possibility, or am I just crazy? Am I a radical conspiracy theorist?
It doesn't. It's you're not totally off, but it's not the way you just said it. It absolutely not. Where you go, wow, the left has had a hard time. We got to throw them a bone. Yeah, that's kind of like been the cliche or what you think. And when there were more events on the PBA tour, it may have been possible that people thought that way. Well, that's going to be their bone, or here's a, but that has never. I've been doing this since 2008, and we have never said that. Never said, okay, we got to do this. Now we do look at the results of every event and want it to be as fair as possible.
Right.
And that's almost impossible, but we bust our ass trying to make
it's impossible. You can say it's impossible.
Yeah, it is pretty much impossible. But if something is really skewed one way or the other, you need to address it, and you need to figure out what can we do better, and how can we know where we're going and the tendencies of a center better. And they change. So you have to do more research. Then you have to figure out, okay, the patterns that we're using, the balls that are being used, the types of players and where they're bowling in the field. How can we make it better so no one will say, oh, that was for the left? Or you can come up with conspiracies when you see it happen. And we want to eliminate that. And we just want to make it as fair as possible. And yeah, I mean, the World Series last year, the left definitely had it. And Thunderbolt, we never really thought of it as a left-handed place.
It is.
But yeah, at the Masters, it kind of was a couple years ago.
Lanes were tilted right.
So, and then we're going to Reno for the World Series, and everybody knows that the old
Lanes hook
beliefs about about Reno is that the left is at. So we got to make sure that our pattern.
Did you score good there?
I did.
I scored okay too.
Sorry, you're just interrupting him.
I'm sorry.
Jesus, my God, you're just. I agree.
But anyway, no, we don't.
I know
we don't
you're
sit
saying.
there and go, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. What we try to do is have a diverse menu of patterns, understand where we're going, and put the best shot out that will make no one think anything is skewed one way or the other. As bowling centers get older, and as styles of play change, it becomes more and more difficult. And so you look at formats and you go, well, what is the types of formats that can, make this a little bit more even? And match play, elimination match play, if you think about it, like the Masters, is one way to handle that, because you just have two guys on a pair and one match, and so how they work themselves dictates the play. It's not two righties against one lefty on that pair. It's a righty against a lefty, or a lefty against a lefty, or a righty against a righty. And so when you do, and also if the qualifying ends up with a certain skew of, and now you have two-handers too, and you say, well, these types of players are all here. Well, if they face each other, they knock each other out. That's another aspect of match play. So the Masters sometimes can really skew one way or the other, and you almost don't notice it by the end because of the match play format. Now, match play has negatives. Some players are so great, they always want it to be total pins, and they think by the end of a long total pins tournament, I'm going to end up on top, and that's what they want. They don't want to get knocked out bowling a great score because they just happen to draw an opponent who also bowled a great score. And so there's a lot of arguments for either side. So we try to do about an equal amount of match play, elimination match play, and total pins tournaments. But you're right. It's the greatest controversy in the history of bowling is right left, and we just keep attacking it and trying to figure out how can we make it as fair as possible.
Just make the lanes about 32 feet.
Every week.
Just make it 32 feet. Just let the lefties play the gutter. The righties will figure it out.
He's got his 360 pad. He can put his 360 on his
any ball.
urethane. It's fine. Yeah, no big deal. You get it.
That's how it should be.
I'll save that clip. Save that clip. If we go to 32 feet next year, you run that clip and say,
he's a prophet. What can I say?
Watch PBA have a training facility in 2 years.
Yeah,
right? Hey, no.
You'll no longer be the butcher. You're going to be the prophet.
Yes. That'd be good. I'll wear a hat too.
All right, Tom. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
I really like talking to you guys about bowling. You hit on all the key things. You understand what's going on. I mean, it's not, rocket science. So, it's like, what's going to be the critical things, and you kind of can, and when you can ask the right questions, you can get to the heart of a matter. And so I really appreciate it. And I also love New York. I was just in Syracuse last week for a week.
Really?
Because my dad went into the Central New York USBC Hall of Fame, and so I got to watch him go in and watch.
That's pretty cool.
Give his speech.
Yeah, I know. We talked about it last time, how you are from Central New York or Syracuse, and I'm sure there's some new people in the chat, so that's good for them to know that you're I'll put in quotations, a local guy for our Albany area, if you will. And then, so when you're home for Thanksgiving, you can stop by a Town and Country in Albany, and we'll hang out.
That'd be awesome. I'm sure Brian LeClaire bowls there.
Yeah, we've been hanging out with the LeClaire boys lately.
Brian's he bowls at a Dell, but about 15 minutes away.
And as a matter of fact, Andrew Hall just called Anthony. He's subbing tonight. So another guy that's happy about the tour trials this year.
Yeah,
he's awesome. I'm really happy. I was really happy to see him make it through. I felt like, even with the PBA, he was kind of under the radar and always doing so well, and now he did it. He busted out, and so I'm really happy for him. And look at, he'll be in Delaware, then he'll be at the U.S. Open and in Woodland Bowl in Indianapolis, and then he'll be in Chicago for the Illinois Classic, and then he'll be at the Pete Weber in Missouri, and then he'll go to the World Series, and and then he'll go to the mat. I mean, and so I'm really excited for those guys who get an opportunity to know they're in the field, especially a guy like him who was chasing it and bowling PTQ. It's so hard. Yeah. It's amazing what Boog did last year, coming out of a PTQ and winning a title, and now being one of the high money winners for the year. I mean, that's the dream. I mean, that was incredible. And now he'll be a pro.
Look at D-Ron too. I know he's not a weekly PTQ guy so much, but bowling in the Masters and just, winning the Masters as a person that no one knows, at least no one in the country knows. There might be bowlers that know him.
Talk about the left wasn't fair, that one.
You're right. No,
That
you're
was-
right. One
was a tough one for the
lefty made it into
Yeah.
lefty made it into 64, and he was from Sweden, I think.
Thank God I
You know.
didn't go.
That's it. And believe me,
Yeah.
they didn't do it on purpose. They
No,
weren't saying
no.
we're gonna get them out
No,
of
they,
here.
they tried to do it 2 years ago with 47 feet.
I almost made it. I almost made it 2 years ago. I almost made match play. It was almost a wild ride.
That was crazy.
140. That wasn't a good game.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I know it's a little later, so we really appreciate you coming on tonight,
Thank you.
Tom.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Have a good
Have
one
a
and
good
good
night.
luck this
Thanks a lot.
season too.
Take it easy. Bye bye.
All right, everybody. Tom Clark, Commissioner of the PBA. That was good. Tom is always a good interview, by the way.
Well, he knows what he's talking about.
I
you know?
would hope
great.
so.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, he answers the questions really thoroughly.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Very good with the brain. He doesn't he thinks before he speaks, unlike
Mhm.
myself. Because I tried to talk about
You're just sitting there thinking.
You think?
well, I was like, I had to explain the Bass, how the Bassmaster Elite series did it,
Mhm.
and I don't think he followed right away.
Tyler came in clutch with the.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the right. Yeah, I just and when he was talking about endorsements or whatever, he says the people made money on endorsements. I wasn't talking about that. I'm actually talking about the performance for where
Yeah.
you finish in the tournament, not
Your actual
endorsements.
earnings.
Your actual earnings
Yeah.
from the tournaments, nothing else. They were down money, but hopefully he checks that out. He probably didn't know. You might have to email him the link to what we were talking about because he was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah.
But other than that, Kyle, any questions we didn't? We had a few
No,
that we could have
It was
asked.
a great
but-
show. Yeah, but we were jam packed with questions, and like you said, his answers were so thorough that.
And then we had some questions about that after because they were so thorough. He was able to give us all sides of everything.
Yep.
He's got the media training down.
Yeah, but I'm sure he deals with a lot of it. And plus, it seems like the PBA is working towards
Growth.
the growth, which means it's got to be growing. We talked about it last week on the show, Austin. I believe they were up like 21% in viewership.
It was a big number.
It was a big number. It was like 3 million people were watching every
Kyle
time. I
would have went
think.
nuts about it.
Yeah, you would have went
I
crazy
heard,
about
I
it.
heard the stat when I listened back.
So they are
I'm
growing a
an
little
avid
bit.
listener of this podcast.
So now we need to take bets on how long until the PBA training / tournament center
No,
is
yeah.
built.
Well, it's got to be.
I got to be honest. There's probably someone in the PBA that's already talking about it.
Settle down,
So-
Austin. We're saying that Anthony is a prophet. All right.
I am.
Don't give away the idea already.
Yeah,
Um,
I do think that it would be a good idea because then the other thing is I was going to add in, but we had so much to talk about is
Yeah.
that opens up possibilities for a longer season because that
Mhm.
facility would be mainly for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Now,
It's just the only issue there is not getting reach to many fans. So
well, not if it's in the central part of the country, Kyle.
no, I'm saying
And we have the
even
arena
if it's
built.
even if it's in a majorly populated area, it's still just one area.
yeah,
That's
Yeah,
all
but
I'm
if it's all in one spot constantly, it would be the same as like having a favorite football team or something. Like, oh, I
Having to
live in
travel
New
out
York,
to see
but
this one.
I like the LA
Right.
Rams. I'm gonna go out to
like-
California and watch a game.
But like Tom was saying, is people in California aren't Giants fans necessarily, so you have to still reach them.
Right,
Eventually.
but you
Well,
still you still have your national tour, but
Yeah.
like we were talking about before. The
It's like
national tour
off-season
is
events, maybe.
yeah January to May. Okay, well then what about June, July, August?
Yeah.
I mean, you're telling me you can't have
Some
the
sort of event.
the RPI could
Yeah.
be there every so often, which
Mm-hmm.
is going to bring an influx of people. The other thing is you're talking about production and how you have to set up and everything and how timely and how consuming that is. Well, imagine just
in
having
your
a-
own center, it's
there.
set up 100%.
you have two
of the
that are
time.
set up with your booths and stuff like that maybe they don't get used a whole heck of a lot, but what about if you have a private lesson with
Mhm.
a highly qualified PBA guy who does that, boom, your lesson's in there, and then they've already got specto and screens and all that, and you can have a nice one-on-one private with 32 lanes downstairs of whatever it may be to have for open play, or maybe they have a PBA league in that area, or
Rockin' Bowl.
we talked about a team event where the team
Yeah.
event could be every year. It could be a team event for every year where if you're in a PBA tour, you can bowl with anybody. They'd have rules, blah, blah, blah. But, we could go bowl if we were members.
And then
So-
they could give us a commentator's booth, so DLP could
Us
be
the
at
company.
yeah.
Okay, sure.
No.
Just
hey,
saying the
Oh,
Hey, not
kind of like the Super Bowl where they have Radio
Hey.
Row and like you could have a bunch of different
yeah,
streamers
it's like,
covering it.
yeah, there's a podcast.
Yeah.
That
I'm just saying, I think that it would be a fantastic idea. Plus the
You're the idea man.
I've actually had some good
You should be
ideas.
the one sending the
I agree.
emails.
All right, listen. We are way over time. So
No.
it is time for us to go bowling. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell to get alerts from the channel.
We have one more thing to say.
What?
We need to congratulate Brett Groff.
Oh, yeah, Brett Groff.
Last week, we said if somebody guesses our score, Kyle and my score combined, which was 1856, I
Yep.
believe. If somebody won
number.
to the number, had to be
For
perfectly
2
on.
people.
Yep, it had to be
For 4
perfectly on.
games.
Yep. If they hit that, we were going to ship out or give them a free bowling ball of their choice. And in my wildest dreams, did I think that would not happen? Of course, somebody did it. So
Thank God he was local.
yeah,
And Kyle,
thank you, Brett, for commenting.
didn't Kyle strike out in the 10th?
Yes.
All
And
right.
he's like, please no, stop.
No, well, we had no idea. Zach Phillips
Yeah.
ran over, grabbed our sheet. We were packing up, and we're like, "Where's our score sheet?" And Zach's like, "You owe Brett Groff a bowling ball," from halfway down the lane. We're like, "We didn't even do the scores yet." So congratulations to Brett. He did choose a phase A. I think we sent a picture on our Facebook channel.
Yep,
So if you want to
yep.
go see that, go there. No pick a score this week.
I don't think any of us are bowling against each other.
No, we have to have some sort of.
It's a position.
And Anthony needs to recoup all that money.
That was my lunch money. That's my
Yeah.
wife.
So yeah, share this with all your friends.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe
All right,
we'll do
guys.
one. Maybe in December, we'll work on some giveaways, and I'll have Kyle put them out there, and I'll just give
We
you
gotta work on
money.
a shirt.
If we have
I need a
Anthony
shirt.
make a new shirt, we could give
I need
away
a shirt.
Anthony's shirt.
I need a shirt. No, I gotta do a shirt and a ball if I do it. I'm gonna
right.
go all out.
Like us on Facebook, Instagram, the X, all those places. If you don't watch on YouTube or Facebook, you can always download and listen via your favorite podcast service. Please give us that 5-star review, the heart, the like, whatever
4.9.
on those services. And if you want to email us, that's at downlanepod@gmail.com. If you want us to watch your
Bless you.
swing
Bless you.
for us to quote unquote analyze it, that could mean anything, literally. You can email us or tag us in the video online. Thank you to Austin Van Buren. Good show tonight. The producer, Jack Scaccia, proprietor of Town and Country Lanes. Thank you very much. Anthony, good show tonight. Great questions. Thank you to Tom Clark for joining us, commissioner of the PBA. And thank you to my family, Stephanie, Zach, and Ethan.
Janbred.
We will see you guys next week. This is Down Lane Podcast.